Happy Halloween, all you filthy animals! It's good to be back, and I am so glad to have something to actually talk about again. I cannot emphasize to you people enough how happy I am to have a movie I can actually talk about again, and feel like I can talk about it, especially this movie. If there was ever going to be one movie this year that I feel like would kind of bring me back for at least one video, it was going to be this. Because over the course of the last few months, I have been racking my brain to try and find something to talk about. Because I've been watching so much over the last few months and the weeks and all that, just because I needed to have something, but I could never bring it to the forefront. I tried Disenchantment and realized that Matt Groening is probably tapped for ideas but is soldiering on anyway because he's a legacy writer in animation. I watched The Boys and I loved it, but the closest I could get to really functionally talking about it was tangentially with Drew when we talked about remakes. I creamed my jeans at the absolute insanity and the beautiful choreography that was John Wick 3 Parabellum, to the point where I didn't even know what angle to tackle it from. I even toyed around with the idea about why I hate spoiler alert Nazis, but I just realized I was going to be too mean on that one. But then the clouds parted, and while I was away in Idaho visiting family, I had some time to myself, and I decided to go to the movies and watch Joker. And boy howdy, am I so glad I did that. This movie, it's good. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think it's the best movie of the year or anything like that. I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that I think it's the best comic book movie, for that matter. But what I will say is that this is a movie that deserves your respect. And I'd even go so far as to say it is the perfect origin story for probably one of the most prolific and most well-loved supervillains in Western canon. More on that in a little while. First of all, let's get this out of the way right now. Joaquin Phoenix is spellbinding in his performance, and dare I say it, I think he's better than Heath Ledger in some ways. Alright, calm down, people. I know that sounds like blasphemy of the highest order, but just stick with me on this for a little bit, okay? These comparisons are inevitable, especially when we're talking about a character that's so prolific as this, so let's just get them all out of the way now and really talk about the differences here. I'm not going to talk about the animated versions or Cesar Romero in the 1960s TV show or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about the major movie roles. Alright, we're talking about Heath, Jared, Jack, and Joaquin. That's 3 J's and an H. I don't know what to make of that. Look, I have a spooky colored drink just to help my throat not be destroyed. Now, sure, these are my opinions, but we're just gonna run with it for now, alright guys? I want to see if I can get the point across with that. Jack Nicholson's version of the Joker in the Tim Burton Batman movies just never really sat right with me. I mean, sure, Jack has his moments when he does this, but he really just kind of comes off as like a mobster who turns into a villain accidentally, not someone who is lying in wait waiting for one bad day. Right about now is where I would have the Killing Joke on tap for not just this point of the video, but later on down the road, because Tim Burton cites it as the comic that got him in the comics, and he draws a lot of inspiration from it for his first Batman movie. But alas, I'm an idiot and I don't have it here right now for some reason, so you're just going to have to deal with me explaining this verbatim. Because there are similarities in how it happens. He falls into a vat of chemicals, he comes out with a white face and green hair, all that jazz, and it's stupid. It really is stupid how it's made out. And it's unconvincing. Like, is anyone else convinced that this isn't Jack Nicholson just doing what Jack Nicholson does?
If you could see inside, I'm really crying. You might join me for a weep.
I love the guy, but he's kind of typecast as the unhinged person in the room.
You got something you wanna ask me?
I will say he's a better Joker than Jared Leto, who never comes off as more than a club owner with a gimmick, who probably just pisses off Batman more than actually going out of his way of actively targeting him. Like, okay, so he somehow has access to a Chinook helicopter. He's able to break into some freaky laboratory and hold some people hostage, but does anybody really think that this Joker, this one right here, is gonna do anything substantial to Gotham City besides, I don't know, peddling meth? And while we're at it, I'm really glad that Jared got snubbed because of the fact that Joaquin Phoenix was gonna be the Joker in a solo movie. That's what you get for sending used condoms to your co-stars, you moron. But it's not until Heath Ledger that we feel like he's actually a threat. I mean, yeah, okay. Jack Nicholson, he was doing some pretty shady stuff, and you could see that he was willing to kill people, but it was cartoonish, which makes sense because it's a comic book, but still. And then you get to Heath Ledger, and you feel like he's a threat. I mean, if Heath Ledger was the Joker in real life, he'd be on at least a couple dozen different terror watch lists worldwide. He's probably that dangerous. Also, this is just me, but I always liked this bit at the beginning of The Dark Knight when they were talking about the face paint that he puts on.
A slice. I know why they call him the Joker.
So why do they call him the Joker? I heard he wears makeup. Makeup? Yeah, to scare people. You know, war paint.
Falling into a vat of chemicals by accident out of sheer fear and ignorance of what you're looking at is one thing, but actively making yourself look like a crazy person and making yourself intimidating, that's some real psychological mind games at work. I like that. Also, I remember hearing somewhere that Jack Nicholson told Heath Ledger not to get too into it with the role of the Joker because it apparently damaged him so much when he did it. But I ask again, does this look like a man who was actively hurt by a role such as the Joker? Unless I missed something else in his filmography, Jack, Bubby, I'm pretty sure this is just how you operate normally, dude. But you know what's more dangerous than an active terrorist who can bring one of the biggest cities on the planet to its knees in a matter of days? Someone who does it completely by accident.
I used to think that my life was a tragedy. But now I realize it's a comedy.
Joaquin Phoenix's interpretation of the Joker is that of the wrong man in the wrong place in the wrong time, whose actions cause an almost virulent insanity amongst Gotham. I'll try and explain. One of the things that I always liked about Gotham, and one of the greatest strengths, I think, is that it showcases the city as being intrinsically mentally ill. In the episode where Jerome Velasca makes his debut to all of Gotham City, in the process introducing to the city what the Joker would be, he doesn't just leave an impression on them. No. He sends people all over the frickin' city into a contagious psychological episode, to the point where a whole cult is developed and rises up because of his insanity, and they are devoted to him, like some kind of screwed up Jesus. And, surprise, surprise, Joaquin Phoenix's actions over the course of Joker is enough to send the entire city into riots all over the place. Granted, it's more akin to something like being heavily opposed to Wall Street to the point of violent rebellion, but still, he manages to do this with just 3 dead bodies and a couple of bullets. Not even intentionally. And the people love him. They're devoted to him. They don't know who he is. They just know that some clown killed 3 guys that worked for Wayne Enterprises, and all the rich guys are sad about it, but all the people on the low end, the people in the ghettos, they love it. And this kind of brings me to another point about this movie that I feel like needs to be said, because there's a quote I remember from Louis C.K. where he talks about a movie that he has an idea for, where the whole premise is that it's about a guy whose life sucks, and it continues to get worse and worse until he dies. While I wouldn't call Joker a comedy so much as a psychological terror ride, the function of the premise is still basically there. I mean, does anyone really think that Arthur's life is gonna get better if he just embraces the mob? I don't. Louis C.K. ghost wrote this movie, and he didn't even pay someone to put pen to paper. It just happened. I see a lot of people talking about this movie, and they're saying that, in the words of Tim Pool anyway, Antifa are considered the good guys and the rich people are bad. And I don't really buy into that. Mostly because I think that's drawing the wrong message from it. I mean, in Arthur's own words, he says, "I'm not political. I don't believe in anything." Edindro Whitehall gave a really succinct explanation about why these 2 lines were super important, and not only the context of the movie itself, but how it holds up a mirror to the media, both in the movie and real life.
The broader message, other than, you know, a cruel society, you know, creates this kind of thing, is that the media creates this kind of thing. The media turns the Joker into something that he's really not. He had no interest in any of the politics that were going on. A lot of critics have criticized the movie for basically sort of skirting over the political issues, but
you know what I'm talking about. How many people in the mainstream media and every news outlet there is that has any inkling of success that isn't even remotely right-wing, how many of them were watching all the trailers, all the people getting hyped up for this movie and think to themselves, oh boy, we're gonna have a big shootout, it's gonna be Aurora, Colorado all over again, yay, yay, yay. I'll give you a hint.
Everyone
Yeah, seeing it was ambulance chasing like a cut-rate lawyer waiting to make a frickin' penny. Up yours, Brian Stelter. I'll leave a description in the link. Wait. I'll leave a link in the description box below to Edindro Whitehall's video. You should all go watch it. It's a great video, and it is just a superb explanation of those two lines. But anyway, I think that the Joker is kind of one of those things that Gotham was just gonna churn out at some point or another eventually. A little history lesson for you guys, but in World War I, there was one point where Hitler, just as a young soldier, was sent out by his squad to go do some patrol or whatever. And when he came back, his whole squad got hit by a shell and died. There have been people who have speculated throughout the years that if Hitler was killed by that artillery shell as well, it really wouldn't have changed the course of anything going on in Germany beyond World War I. Because it was so right for such a thing to take hold and happen. Hitler just happened to be the one guy who did something about it. Like, for all we know, if Hitler got killed by the shell, Heinrich Himmler was going to be the guy who led Germany and was the chancellor. Arthur Fleck sort of performs the same role. Anyone could have been the Joker, but he just happened to find himself there. The only difference, you know, besides making a world-threatening power that tries to ethnic cleanse Europe, is that Arthur Fleck really doesn't care one way or the other if he is a martyr for the cause of these people rioting or not. In his eyes, he's just out here laughing at everything because, to him, it's all meaningless. It's probably at this point you can guess that I really like Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. I mean, I don't usually rave about performances this much, but by God, this grabbed me by the throat and throttled me hard. It was captivating. It was terrifying. It was so uncomfortable, I felt like I couldn't squirm in my extremely spacious movie theater chair. So moving on from the verbal fellatio I've given, the rest of the movie is good. It really is. It's a fantastically directed movie. It's produced well. It's acted well. The writing is but you know what? It's serviceable. It works for something like this. I like how they show Gotham as just this trashy, disgusting, on the brink of decay and dying city. It makes me think that they're really trying to beat out Detroit as like decaying city #1. I know that this movie is set in 1981, but I can still kind of see it being set in modern day just because the level of decay in Gotham, I think, in real life would be what we're seeing. Also, this movie has the most chilling use of Frank Sinatra's That's Life that I've ever seen before, and I don't know what to make of that. And finally, can we talk about how nice it is that the Joker actually kind of has an origin story now? But my Killing Joke! Again, I don't have it, I can't bring it up here, but listen, I love the Killing Joke as much as the next nerd. I really do. I think it's good. But when the guy who wrote it, Alan Moore, considers it the low point of his career as a writer, I think it's safe to say we can start poking holes in what's going on in this story. Even if there's some really poignant and good things in it. You're gonna have to forgive me for all the ranting and raving you're about to hear because I just realized that's as far as I got in writing this script. Oh God, we're about to go into the weeds. Alright, I'm gonna get this out of the way now because I'm sure I have it in the title somewhere, but I want to say this up front. In no uncertain terms, in no ambiguity or anything, I think this movie is a perfect origin story to the character of the Joker. If they were to make this canon tomorrow in the DC Comics universe, I would be fine with that. It would all make sense to me. Because there's one thing that's always annoyed the living hell out of me about this character, and that he doesn't have a concrete backstory. Even the Killing Joke could be chalked up to him just being completely insane. I couldn't say the word I wanted to. And while in some ways that's not bad, in a lot of ways it's annoying and doesn't have a lot of consistency to it. And it feels like a cop-out. It feels like anytime they want to reboot the universe or something, they can just go ahead and say, well, he's a crazy person, and I don't like that. The crazy doesn't always explain everything. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you just have blind idiot gods like Azathoth, and you're just like, alright, cool, whatever. It's insane, I can't comprehend it, it's Lovecraftian, oh god, don't smite me. But I think the best part of the Killing Joke is kind of what's going to cement why Joker works. And that's because the whole premise of it is that it was just one bad day that changed a bad comedian who was down on his luck into the most capable and most terrifying supervillain in DC Comics history, and is one of the most quintessential rogues, I think, of the modern world for like the last, I don't know, what, 70, 80 years now at this point? Who doesn't know who the Joker is, for God's sake? But guess what? While DC Comics the Killing Joke Joker only had like a bad day. Arthur Fleck had a horrible freaking life. You go through all the stuff that Arthur Fleck goes through in his life, and you tell me that you wouldn't probably come out a bit nihilistic too. And plus, this is just me, but I don't like ambiguity all the time. It's not fun. Like, I remember reading Scott Snyder's run on Batman for the New 52, and apparently the Joker was someone who's been harnessing some kind of like Lazarus Pit life force thing to regenerate him since Gotham became a city back in the, or became a settlement back in colonial times, and he's like some local legend, the White Man. It's weird. I don't like it. It's better to just have it be static and be like, okay, this is where Joker starts. This is not where he starts. This is where he goes to. And Joker does that. Okay, so at this point, I had to go feed the cat, so I might have forgotten some things. So if I repeat it, sorry. But while I like things like Elseworlds and alternate realities and stuff like that that could give you just a weird explanation as to where the Joker came from, in the end, it's better to have something be static. There's a reason that we all know how Peter Parker became Spider-Man and what his motivations are, how Batman became who he is, how Superman became Superman, and how a lot of the better villains all have generally the same freaking motivations. Static is better than always changing. And going back to the Killing Joke, because I loved the book, I didn't really care for the animated movie, but Joker is what the Killing Joke should have been. Because ever since I've read that book, I've always wanted to know more. What was going on with this character? Why was his life so terrible? What was it that made it fun? Was there anything that made it fun? Enjoyable? What was it that maybe made him crack, or made him easier to crack than most? Like, I've always wanted to know, what was it that this comedian's material was like? Was there any merit to it? Maybe he could have been a good comedian. We don't know. Poor guy was so downtrodden, he went to the mob and then fell into God knows what, and then he became what he is, which is kind of tragic. I'm not sure if I could say that this will be one of our decade's best tragedies as far as movies, because I don't watch every movie out there, unfortunately, as much as I wish I could. But it still should be said, it's a great movie. It's a great origin story, and it deserves respect, because I don't think there are a lot of movies out there that can make you feel really unsettled like it did me. I haven't watched a lot of the crazier movies out there, like a Serbian film or anything like that, so I don't have a huge threshold for things that freak me the hell out, especially when we get closer and closer to real life like this movie kind of does. But Joker is one of those movies that I could sit down, watch it again, be totally uncomfortable with everything that's happening and everything I'm seeing, and just feel the weight of the emotion that's being charged through the screen, and actually feel unpleasantly about it, and then feel pleasant from that. I don't know if they were going to make sequels for it. I don't know if this is going to be a one-shot. I'm just glad it exists, because I think it will go down as maybe being one of the better one-shots and one of the better Joker stories out there. And for that, you should watch it. With all that said, I'm Dan the Movie Man. Have a happy Halloween, and have a good one.